Hello, welcome to video number 4. In this video we're going to be adding on to our star field pattern that we made in video 2. And so I've loaded it up here. I had to make it again, so it might be slightly different, but I'll just let you look at what I got here. It's pretty simple. I added this linear module since last time, and what that's doing is it's doing the scaling in the texture itself, so we don't have to edit the mapping. We can just throw the texture on the environment and it looks perfect. So that's convenient. So let's take a look at this. I'll just render the scene. And okay, that's great. Very simple texture, very nice looking. What we want to do is add some nebula to it. Or nebulae, or whatever, however the plural of that is. Because we want to make this a little more interesting. I figure we're going to make a bunch of textures and we're going to kind of put them all together at the end of the series and make an image with planets and some sort of sci-fi image, and every texture in the scene will be procedural, and it's going to be really cool looking. So we have to make it look interesting, and I have yet to introduce you to layered textures, so I think this will be a great opportunity. So let's just close this and go to Textures and Materials, create a new procedural 3D texture. So what we want to do first is, of course, define the shape, like I always say. What pattern is it going to be based off of? And for when you're creating stuff that's more or less parts of nature, like in the last video when we animated water, or in this case when we are doing nebula, we want a noise, some kind of random noise. I made a fire texture, which I'm going to show you in the next video, that I used turbulence for, and it looks really awesome. It's just because they're slightly different patterns, they're good for different things, and it's just trial and error, really, is how you know what they're good at. So anyway, we need this module here to define our shape. And we're going to throw this into transparency because we want the stars to show through. And this is not enough here. I'm going to grab, under functions, we're going to grab custom, which I've explained before. And we want most of this to be transparent. So I'm just going to drag this up like that. Okay. So this defines our nebulous shape. Now we just need to color it. Like, this isn't a very complicated texture. I know I ended last video by saying I do something complicated, but I figured I wanted to introduce you to layered textures first. Okay, let's grab another noise module. Now, when you're using multiple noise modules, it's important to note that they're doing exactly the same thing. The noise coming out of here, the seemingly random pattern, is the exact same random pattern that this one's creating. So sometimes when you're creating two patterns and they're exactly the same, you kind of get a weird effect. We don't want the color of the gas to be dependent on the shape. So what we're going to do, this is a trick that I've used a lot. We're going to grab a linear module, connect all of these, and we're going to simply move it by 5 units. That means it's now taking a different chunk of the random pattern, so it'll look completely different. In fact, I can show you that. Let's just copy this one and bring it in here. You can see that simply by changing this X value, we generate an entirely new pattern of shapes. So that is a very good trick, because they're supposed to be random, and when two random patterns are the same, they're clearly not random, and it just kind of looks weird. So there's that. We need some color, custom color. I'm not sure what color nebula are. I think a lot of them are the infrared spectrum, and the pictures we see online are all just digitally enhanced. So it's just, okay, I was playing with this before. I had a few colors I liked. Let's try this green first. Then this kind of yellowish. And then this blue here. And I'm also going to use this, and we're going to scale this down. This is really unintuitive. When you scale something by 5, you expect it to get bigger, but what we're doing is shrinking it by 5 times. Just keep that in mind. I don't know what the logic is behind that, but okay. And that looks okay. Let's see what it looks like. Oh, I should probably name it. Okay. And let's throw that on our environment. Yes, we're going to overwrite the star pattern for now, but okay, it's kind of smooth though. Doesn't actually look supernatural, so we're gonna supernatural. Doesn't look natural. We're going to take this and actually increase octaves by about, let's put it at 20. That looks better. Okay, now we just need to layer the two, layer one on top of the other, and we're going to put the nebula on top of the stars. And I want to caution you when you start dealing with layered textures, they're very glitchy. For some reason, no one's really talked about this on the forums or anything, but I've had so many problems with this, I end up just putting the effort into combining these two into one texture, which takes a bit more work and understanding, but that I don't want to get into this video. But what we're going to do here is just kind of cross our fingers and hope things work out. So we throw our stars on after we've selected our layered texture from here, and then we throw our nebula on, and I cannot even click on it. Like I said, very glitchy. Click. Nope, nothing. Okay then. Let's try that again. Layered texture. Let's add that one. Let's add that one. Move this one up. And this has some transparent sections, so what we want to do is select the blending mode of the nebula texture to overlay. Then press OK. I'm very glad that worked. Let's see what we got. Okay, that's looking pretty good. The thing about space, though, is there's nothing really this obvious. Like the trick with making space scenes is that things need to be subtle. This is super bright and doesn't look very natural the way it is. I just want to dim it. We need to simulate the idea that it's extremely far away, yet still extremely massive. So I'm just going to try dimming this, and I'm going to use a texture parameter. I showed you those in the last video. And we're going to use a new module here. Under color functions, we're going to grab blend, and this is a neat one. You plug in a color here and a color there, or a pattern like we have here, and depending on the value you plug into it, it blends between the two. Because our background is mostly black, I'm just going to blend it with black. And we can see by clicking on these inputs that black is the default, and white is the default. And this is set to 0.5. So basically it's going to take it's going to mix these two in even amounts. So if I plug this in, it's just going to be gray. Let's get rid of that for now. And we just see gray. That is exactly what we should see. And now we're going to take this and we're going to blend black with our color to create the same pattern, just darker. More black. So we're going to put this back into transparency, and I am going to grab a parameter here. We're going to call this nebula visibility. I'm going to throw it into the fraction. Minimum 0, maximum 1, good, and default will be, let's say, that. Okay, that's a step in the right direction. But now that we have that texture parameter, we can hopefully adjust it. Oh, there we go. Great, another glitch. Let's see here. Can't do anything with that. Let's kind of reset it. Layered texture, let's do this again. Okay, and let's bring this down to something like that. Much better. I find it's just a better visual effect when someone has to look. The longer they look, the more stuff they see. It's very easy to miss this nebula, but that's kind of how it is in real life. It shouldn't be too bright because it's extremely far away. Let's look around, see if we can find something else. Because we don't want it to be too dense. Hey, that is good. So if you're having problems with the layered texture, what you're going to want to do is mix the two textures together into one. And I guess I'll show you how to do that. I wasn't planning to, but let's go simple texture. We're going to go to Nebula and copy everything. Control C. Stars, Control V. Okay. And you're not going to want to put this into transparency because there's no transparency. You don't want the stars to be transparent. So we're going to use the blend module again. We're going to delete this, combine those together. And of course what you get is kind of this weird dark gray pattern because it's simply blending them, and this isn't, we're not removing any parts of this pattern. So that's what we're going to do with this noise module. Rather than sending this into transparency, we're going to send this into the blend module. And this is going to require some tweaking, I guess. It's looking pretty good. Let's take a look. Okay, so now we have the stars and the nebula all in one texture. And this is, it's still just as good because you can go in and still change all the parameters you want. That's the great thing about procedural textures. But you can't change them individually. Like if you wanted to randomly generate new nebula, you would have to go into the stars texture, and it's a little more complicated and harder to read. And of course, if this is too bright, you can always just change this, make it a bit dimmer, and everything gets dimmer. So I'll do one final render here, and I'll leave it at that.